Ahoy, quality management people, and welcome to this episode of our Quality Solutions series. Thank you for joining. Today, we're covering a topic that's near and dear to our hearts, tackling the costs of poor quality through nonconformance handling. As always, all registrants will receive a link to the recording, and be sure to use the GoToWebinar panel to ask questions or share your thoughts during the presentation. And we'll have room at the end for some Q&A as well. I'm Angela Anderson, Product Marketing Manager with ETQ, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tom Barlow, one of ETQ's in-house quality experts and strategic solution engineers. Say hello to the good people, Tom.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.
All right. Thanks, Tom. So in today's session, we aim to help you advance your quality management journey and think about how you can establish clear ROI in your QMS planning. Every day here at ETQ, we help organizations navigate their quality journeys. These journeys are similar, but not the same. Some teams see their processes in disarray and they're inclined to first pursue things like document control or training management. These are critical aspects of your quality management system for sure, and there may be a pressing need like an audit. However, in this planning phase, it's an opportunity to perhaps take stock with a little different view. Do you rely on buy-in from teams outside of quality, like finance or IT, to approve the investment in purpose-built quality management technology? Well, if so, then you'll need to translate those quality objectives into the language of business to help drive that buy-in. Like this quote from our quality guru, Philip Crosby, "The unquality things are what cost money." And we know that language of business is all about cost and risk. It's difficult to turn dot control and training alone into compelling cost benefits for perhaps your CFO to base a funding decision on. And this is where a study of nonconformance handling can help you identify the things that cost money, that cost money or create risk, and turn that information into your business case and creating that path for those early wins. So before we get too much further along here, let's take a look at what we mean by nonconformance. Tom, I'm gonna hit you up here. What, in your words and experience, what is a nonconformance?
If you could just click it one more time for a second there.
Clicked.
Excellent. So nonconformance is really, could have different meanings, and that's one of the reasons we're having a discussion today. So as for said here, it's in quality management, a nonconformity, or otherwise known as a nonconformance or defect, is a deviation from a specification, a standard, a procedure, or an expectation. So in a little bit, we'll be investigating some different ways of tracking that and managing that within your QMS.
Great, thanks, Tom. And perhaps there is other terminology around nonconformance, and really it almost doesn't matter what you call it. The processes, would you say, are in ETQ to be able to handle nonconformances or deviations or whatever those other words might be. ETQ has the flexibility to handle those processes.
We do. I mean, there are other systems that have those, similar processes, but what ETQ does so well is it's all connected within our system. So there's a lot of synergy with the different relationships between the processes. And one of the things we'll talk about in the next section is the process overview of how it could fit together.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So before we get there, let's take a quick look at how those nonconformances or deviations might materialize in the real world as drivers of that cost and risk, like we talked about. Do any of these situations sound familiar to you? Inconsistent processes, reducing productivity. That's wasted capacity that could be deployed elsewhere. Siloed systems forcing duplication of work. That's more hours wasted on something that could be automated. Hidden factory piling up with scrap and waste. that's cash flow tied up in inventory. Product defects causing high field failure rates, that's a slew of hard costs to deal with this. These issues span a range of impacts to the business, and it could take some work to quantify and prioritize them. And shameless plug alert here, but later in this presentation, I'm going to share some information on our personalized ROI calculator that can provide kind of a fast track to doing just this, the quantification. All right, so what you'll see ahead with Tom, as I kind of hinted at there, is how these quality-based workflows can help you tackle these issues by connecting people, processes, and the systems across your entire product lifecycle. And one of the benefits of this closed-loop quality approach is the ability to identify and handle nonconformance at any and every point, and importantly, address those issues as early as possible in the process. So why is that important? Well, it's important because that cost and risk of those defects and those nonconformances significantly increases the further along in the chain they travel. So as a quality professional, you've probably seen this rule of thumb before. It's as true today as it ever was. This 1-10-100 rule, it illustrates the importance of identifying and acting on minor problems before they spiral into significant issues. The cost of, let's just throw an example out here. So the cost of preventing non-conforming material from reaching the production floor might represent, say, $1. That's a fantasy world number, but we'll say it represents $1. The cost of scrap, rework, refits, tests, inspections due to that defective material escaping into production might represent $10. And then the big hit comes, the cost of a field failure, it might balloon to $100, and not to mention, the ding to your brand reputation and other impacts. The increasing orders of magnitude in this rule of thumb are striking and can represent both hard and soft cost. So hopefully thinking about this rule gets you thinking about how you might communicate the cost of poor quality by putting your own numbers against these scenarios to paint that picture of the potential ROI for your business stakeholders. Okay. So to make that ROI picture a reality, you'll need to have the mechanisms in place, the technology in place to effectively collect nonconformance reports, track, trend, and act on that data. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to hand it off to Tom, and he's going to introduce you to the ETQ Reliance platform and talk more about nonconformance handling as a hub for that closed-loop quality process, or for those closed-loop quality processes that can really squeeze those costs of poor quality out of your business. So with that, I will hand it off to you, Tom.
Well, thanks, Angela. So let's take a look at the overview of ETQ Reliance a little bit and talk about how we can help manage nonconformity within the system from all the different possible sources. Just a little intro into ETQ Reliance. It's really a web-based, workflow-based business process automation platform that has 42 pre-configured applications on one highly configurable platform. And when I say configurable, I mean drag and drop configuration capability for your non-technical administrators. It's all hosted in the cloud, so it's easy to access and manage because we do all the back-end management of the system for you. Our system is based on 4 building blocks that we use for our newest version called the ETQ Reliance NXG, or Next Generation. We're constantly focusing on these things moving forward. Usability, our goal is to make it extremely easy to use the system, minimizing the amount of effort it takes to get from one thing to another. Flexibility, the system is highly flexible, so as I just mentioned, non-technical administrators can configure it without programming. Flexibility also makes it future-proof, because as needs change in the future, even needs that we can't even anticipate at the moment, our system can be configured to meet those needs. Visibility, designed with advanced analytics to do analytics and reporting and make better business decisions faster. And then, of course, scalability. The system is designed to be a single source of the truth. It's designed to grow with your organization. We have some customers that are quite large international companies with different facilities and different business units all over the world. And the system should be performing in a similar fashion as it would for a smaller company as well. But we also have the ability to scale across the entire organization. So everyone is using one instance of our system. It's not separate instances. What does the system look like? I mentioned before that it's a platform. So the quality journey that Angela mentioned earlier, where you have the initial step of the process where you initiate some of the core applications, the core processes that are more of the fundamentals in your quality management system or compliance management system, document control, training, etc., that are listed here. Those would be the starting point. And then we have application sets that have an average of about 4 additional applications per application set that you can optionally add to the system, either initially as part of the initial implementation or also moving forward. Since we're talking nonconformance, we're going to talk about, there are several areas on this that we're going to touch on. First is the nonconformance handling application set, how, with respect to what is nonconformance, how can you track nonconformances or issues? We'll talk about that, and these are the 4 applications that are available as part of that application set. It would just be essentially additional applications on the same platform, so they all look and feel the same, they all talk to each other. We'll talk about that again in a moment. Also, we wanted to touch on 2 new applications that we recently added to our system. These are standalone applications that you can choose to add. Lab investigations is for out of spec or out of tolerance situations you might identify in a laboratory environment, where you can identify the issue, investigate the issue, and then determine if it's worthy of a nonconformance report or a corrective action or whatever it might be. And then there's a quality events application, which is designed to capture those issues that are not discretely a product nonconformance. And this is really part of the definition, or really the differentiation between what's a product nonconformance and what's a nonconformity. A nonconformity could be an issue or a problem that's a deviation from a standard process, or not a failure to follow a standard process, or not meet expectations, as we discussed a few minutes ago. So this application can be a dual purpose, and you'll see in a moment I have an overview slide that shows how it fits in. But this could be the place that people go to create an observation, so that somebody might observe somebody that's not doing something correctly, and they can just launch a quality event app, and that has a process to be for people to analyze and evaluate, investigate, determine what has to happen next. But it could also be the ultimate the repository of all issues from other places, like product nonconformances or customer complaints, or from an audit finding, or whatever it might be. So it might be a kind of a common mechanism or common place for you to track all issues, and that gives you very powerful trend analysis capabilities of all the issues from all the different sources, and the evaluation of them, and the analysis of those, but also the ability, and this is the most important thing, to determine if a corrective action is even needed. And we'll get into that in just a couple of more moments. I'm going to quickly touch on the 6 platform capabilities of the system, because when you have an organization and you have a system, we have these different capabilities that are really infused across all the applications. First of all, we already talked about adaptability. That's the configuration capability of our system. So it's easy to adapt our system to meet your changing needs. And it's easy to adapt in that you don't have to have IT do it, you don't have to have us do it. Your administrators would be trained on using our drag and drop designer tool to be able to adapt not only existing out-of-the-box apps that we pre-configure, but you can also use our system as a platform to configure other apps. Connectivity between processes, we'll talk about this today as well. That's one of the most major differentiators between our system, is that you have the ability to have an issue and then the launching of additional things like an event or quality event or corrective action or whatever might have to be related to that. Integration with existing systems. So not only do we have connectivity between the applications in our system, but we also realize that we don't work in a vacuum. You have other systems in place, CRM tools, ERP, MES tools, PLM, product lifecycle management, etc. All kinds of other tools out there that have other information that we have to leverage. So it's designed to allow you to integrate. So it pulls all that information together. Contextual awareness, based on the location in the organization, you can set it up so people can only see the information that pertains to them. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I want to move it along a little bit and get into the live demo in just a moment. That capability allows you to achieve another thing called external collaboration. So in other words, if you had your own internal organizational structure predefined and someone logs in from a certain location, the system can be set up so that it would only show those people the information that pertains to them. However, you can extend that hierarchy to include external users like contractors or suppliers, and you can allow them to collaborate with you on any business process. So that's another extremely powerful capability. And then on top of that, we have what we call anywhere access. Of course, it's hosted in the cloud, so you can access it from anywhere. You don't have to worry about your own organizational network structure or your firewalls because it's easy to access anywhere. The security ensures that only people can access the information that they're allowed to see. We also support browsers on mobile devices like tablets. So that's part of the anywhere. Take it with you. You can take it on the tablet. And you also have a mobility app that's available, which is downloadable for Apple and Android devices that you could also choose to use to work online or offline, leveraging onboard functionality like the camera, like the voice to text functionality to be able to capture information. So the whole idea is that it's really a platform that's designed for easy access and easy interactions between the processes. So that's the introduction to the ETQ Reliance platform. And I mentioned a few times that I would be quickly discussing kind of an overview of how we can track issues, nonconformities, nonconformances, deviations, whatever you want to call it. There are different ways to track it, but it's all integrated together, and it makes it easy to identify the solution as well as the ultimate corrective action to the problem, and it all funnels through the same process. So this diagram, which is going to build as I talk, and I'm going to skip through it a little bit, one of the sources of an issue or a nonconformity could be a customer complaint or field issue. So you can track it either right in our system or interact with your existing CRM tool to capture that event. From there, you could click a button and launch a product nonconformance report. So if the customer feedback record or the customer complains about certain products, you may want to be able to track that product as a nonconformance and then be able to disposition that nonconformance when it comes back from the customer. So from the customer feedback, you could launch a nonconformance. So this is one source of entering into the QMS through nonconformity or an issue that occurs. The other could be through your process, your production process. You might identify a product nonconformance. If you're using a tool like an MES tool or ERP system to address those inspections and handle those inspections, that's an automation. And when we talk about automation, that's one of the ways that you can have a major impact on your cost of quality, because with automation comes the ability to do things very quickly because of the fact that the system is acting on decisions that have already been pre-made. So those things would be configured into the system. So a product nonconformance that's identified or an issue, an out-of-spec situation on the plant floor could automatically trigger a product nonconformance, which could then launch a SCAR, a supplier corrective action, which using external collaboration could be sent right to your external supplier. So very quickly, the system is making all these things happen because of the automation that's been configured into it. Another source of entry into the quality management system through a nonconformity could be an audit finding, right? So an audit is nothing more than a planned mechanism to verify compliance. So there's an audit process. We have an audits management application that lets you schedule and plan and conduct audits in the system. You can use the mobile device, all those other things that we already talked about, which is the reason we talk about those things, puts it into context. When an issue is identified, you can click a button and you can see that there are arrows from any three of these sources of nonconformity, if you will, or issues that lead into a quality event record. So I mentioned before, this is a relatively new application because what used to happen is you would launch a corrective action from any of these sources. But we took our customer feedback from our existing implementations and they said, we'd really like to have a mechanism to evaluate the issue and determine if a corrective action is needed. And we'd like to have it done in a consistent way so that we can track all issues and categorize them and be able to do very powerful trend analysis and reporting. So if we have all these different sources of issues leading into a quality event, we have the ability to analyze them, but we also have the ability to investigate the issue, determine if it's worthy of additional consideration. Is it high risk? Is it low risk? Were there other events related to this? So our system has the ability to either manually or automatically tie related events together, because there could be multiple fields that you're tracking. So multiple nonconformances of the same category might be worthy of a bigger problem. So the quality event could tie that together automatically. So there are other examples that could occur in a similar fashion. Once you do the root cause analysis, you could choose to do a corrective action, or you could choose, and this is the real power of this process, because this is where you can say, you know what, it's not worthy of a full corrective action at this point. It doesn't need any more of our time and resources. And that's the thing that occurs in a lot of our customers, is that they've told us that prior to implementing a system like this and a process like this, they were spending a lot of time dealing with knee-jerk type responses to corrective actions for any kind of a problem, regardless of the significance of the problem or the risk associated with it. So what they were able to do is have a mechanism, a consistent mechanism for evaluating the issue, assessing it, documenting it, so you have objective evidence of that occurring, and then a determination that we just need to track and trend it. We're going to close it. We're not going to go any further. Or you could, of course, determine that it's worthy of a full corrective action. So from the quality event, you could click a button. It would launch a corrective action automatically. It would pull information from the source record into this record again, so you don't have to retype stuff. It ties it together using links. And then the corrective action planning allows you to define multiple action items or propose multiple action items that have to be done. And our system will allow you to, once the action plan gets approved, it would assign those actions and make sure that they get done, to make sure that employees are trained and make sure that everyone knows what's going on. So we've presented something similar to this in the past, and we talked about the closed loop corrective action process. This is very also appropriate when we talk about nonconformity, because nonconformity, nonconformances, there are different types of nonconformities and nonconformances that occur, and something like this allows you to track all of it while still ensuring that it goes through the same mechanism for evaluation and investigation, as well as corrective action, to make sure that you ensure continuous improvement to make sure that the problem doesn't occur in the future. So that's a constant feedback loop that takes place. So for the live demonstration, what I think I'll do is jump into our system live for a moment, and I'm going to start with the corrective action and then work backwards into some of the other processes that we discussed, just to talk about how it could all be basically the common processes. I'm just going to click on this, which gives me a list of open corrective actions. I can now search for the ones that are assigned to me. I have all these different ones that came from different sources. So the first one I wanted to touch on was, it came from a nonconformance report, which is this one. So this is a corrective action that came from a product nonconformance. I can click on this record, this link, and it actually brings me to the source product nonconformance. So when we talk about nonconformance, nonconformity, the purpose of this record is specifically designed for product nonconformances. So it's an issue with the product where you identify the problem, the defect code. You can link or launch a supplier corrective action and then disposition it. This is very traditional product nonconformance speak. In fact, the step is even called MRB review or material review board review. So they can evaluate the issue, determine if there's a temporary change, determine if there's a risk associated with it, and then determine if a corrective action is needed. They could also choose to launch a quality event from this, as per the diagram that I mentioned before we get to the corrective action. So this is just one source of the type of an issue that could lead into a corrective action. Another one that I'd like to focus on for just a second is the idea of the quality event. So if I come over to this record right here, this corrective action is now a little bit further on in the process, where we're at the root cause analysis and action planning step. So somebody can do the root cause analysis using one of the tools that we provide. They can also propose an action plan. This allows you to define multiple actions that you might want to do in response to the corrective action. So I can define what type it is, etc., who should do it, what's the due date, do I want someone else to verify it, and then just add as many actions as I want. Once the action plan gets approved and moves to the implementation step, the system triggers child action items automatically to assign those actions to make sure that they get done. But in this case, this particular corrective action came from a quality event record that somebody just created in the system to identify a deviation from a process. So somebody observed somebody wasn't following a procedure correctly. So someone literally just logged into the system and created a new quality event record from scratch because it wasn't a quote unquote product nonconformance. It wasn't a customer complaint, but it was an issue that they thought someone should address. So they were able to record the problem, identify what they saw. They were able to define any immediate actions that they took. There was an initial review done throughout the process. So this is going through the workflow to different steps. It then allows you to assess risk, as I mentioned before. This also allows you to propose an investigation plan. So this literally allows you to have multiple investigation actions that different people might have to do. And once it moves to the from the plan approval phase to the active investigation, it triggers child actions and assigns those actions to them. It lets you summarize the results. You can also use this to conduct root cause analysis here at this point instead of in the corrective action, and that would get inherited over to the corrective action. And then we can determine if anything is needed, such as a corrective action or not. So this is the stopgap essentially to allow you to determine whether a corrective action is needed or not. And the other quick thing I wanted to point out here in this process, which is an extreme time saver, is when you get a record that's in this step of the workflow, and this one in this case came from a nonconformance report that I just discussed earlier, someone could determine if it's just for tracking and trending. So I just want to bring your attention to the workflow at the top. Right now, it says we're not going to just track and trend it. We're going to move it on to the investigation process. If I say, yes, we're going to just track and trend it, it's a low risk, it's not worthy of any additional action, it allows you to skip it and go right to the final approval step. So the idea is that it saves a tremendous amount of time and it still funnels it through the same process. One other thing I'd like to touch on, just to complete the story around the diagram that I showed, and this is actually another app that I mentioned in the introduction part, is the lab investigation part. So this is also a corrective action. In this case, there was a lab investigation that was launched. There was some finding in the laboratory where someone was able to capture the event, the out of spec situation, whatever it might be. They can record test results, they can identify the equipment, they can then do the investigation and the activities for testing that have to be done to verify the issue. It can go through a full investigation process and require additional testing or not. Once again, the risk assessment is linked in. It allows you to do a root cause analysis as well as determination if other actions such as a corrective action or nonconformance are required. So in either of these cases, it allows you to launch the related record that then ties into the bigger picture story. So we've looked at a lot of things in a really, really short time, but the one thing I really wanted to focus on from the diagram that I presented is that when you have nonconformity, when you automate your processes and you have connectivity between those processes, you can ensure that you're acting on those things faster. You're integrating with your ERP or MES systems as well to stop nonconformances from getting worse, especially if it's something like a product nonconformance. So the idea is to get there quicker, make faster, act on things faster because you've got the system pre-configured to do that. You're achieving automation and you're implementing corrective action much faster to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to do and ensuring continuous improvement. So Angela, I think I've said my piece.
Thank you, Zach. Sorry, I apologize for that. I was on mute, obviously. Sorry about that. So my suggestion, Tom, was before you move away from the demo, we had a couple of questions come in the chat, and we've got the time, so maybe we can just address them while you still got your demonstration window handy there.
Sure.
And I think you probably answered this in the course of your demo, but just to kind of reiterate perhaps. Tim says, not every nonconformance is created equal. However, our nonconformance process is one size fits all. It was built to address the highest risk nonconformances. How do users typically segregate these issues that have very low risk?
That's a good question. And let me just come back and talk about that in the context of the nonconformance here. So based on the way we described it in the diagram, there are two possible options. One is you could, as part of your evaluation of the nonconformance, you could actually use a risk assessment. One of the applications you might recall from the core is called the risk register. The idea is that, and it's technically called a utility because it can be used from any application. And you saw in the very short demo that I did, I had 2 or so different places that from which you could launch a risk assessment. So this is a objective way where you can determine using your own risk matrix with probability and severity, et cetera. I'm actually going to just click on it here. So the risk register is centralized so that you can launch it from anywhere. But what it does is it allows you to not only pull the information from the nonconformance report and also identify the risk item or the risk category that you have in your own risk register. So this would be part of the initial setup of our system, would be to import your own existing risk categories. Then we have this risk matrix, which actually has 2 dimensions. It has probability and severity. So someone can, as part of this workflow that would be assigned to the risk assessment for this process, they would be able to assess risk for different things. In this case, this particular risk matrix has 3 different items that it's looking at. One is the safety implication of this issue, which you can see the risk level is high. The legal implications, which is considered undesirable, and that was based on the user selecting the appropriate values from each of these, which then multiplies them together to come up with that result. And then the business impact of this issue. So the idea here is that this is what we pre-configured, but it can easily be modified, and it can also include up to 4 different dimensions. So some people use something like similar to RPN, severity, occurrence, and detection, as a means of evaluating risk. So this gives you the ability to objectively evaluate the risk of this issue. In this case, it's being done in the nonconformance report itself, but I also showed that it could be done from the quality event record. So you can choose when you implement a process like this where you want that to occur. Because the safety implication was the highest level of risk, that's the level of risk that was inherited back into the source nonconformance report, which is automatically linked through that connectivity capability we talked about before. So therefore, the result of this risk assessment could then drive what happens next. So if it's a low level of risk, we objectively had determined as an organization through whatever criteria we built into our risk register and risk matrix that it's not a high risk. Therefore, it may not be worthy of a full corrective action. And we can just close the event. Or this could have been done, as I mentioned, from the quality events application as well, that could have been launched. Then the question becomes, what happens if we start to develop a trend of low risk events? Each separately are not worthy of a full corrective action. But because we have a global system, and one of the reasons I introduced the concept of the global implementation is that you might have different facilities that are each recording these issues in a similar way, right? So you have fields that are categorizing the issue, the product category, the defect code, the location. All these things are being built into the forms, and they're being tracked by the system. And even though each individual group may not necessarily know that they have a problem because they just see an issue with a supplier, the bigger picture might be a developing trend. So we have a utility called Quality Alerts that allows you to monitor for trends, and you can define what these trends look like. What's the threshold? What's the number? So let's say we had 5 or more nonconformances against the same product defect code within a week. That might be indicative of a bigger problem. Each one is low risk, but because we had 5 in a short time, that might be indicative of a bigger problem. And in that case, that could trigger a quality event, for example, which would allow you to track and investigate the issue in a bigger picture sense and then take corrective action.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Are you open to take in one more?
Absolutely.
It's a related question. Oh, right. So Emily asks, this is about the relationship between risk register and FMEA.
Hmm.
Could you use risk register to subjectively replace FMEA?
So technically, it actually could be done because you have the ability to build RPN right into the risk register, into the risk assessment. But just from a mechanical perspective, it might be easier to do it in the context of the FMAA itself. What we do suggest, and this would allow you to tie the post quality to the design, and that is when you talk about FMEA, you're talking about failure mode, you're talking about controls, you're talking about putting controls in place to reduce the RPN as part of your design or your process or whatever it might be that you're looking at for in the FMEA. If you were to tie the failure modes to the risk items that we just discussed in the risk register, when you start to get a nonconformance or when you start to develop post-market issues, whether it's customer complaints or product nonconformances or whatever it might be, you can tie the risk assessment to the risk item, which is at the top of the risk assessment record I showed before, which is then, because it's tied to the failure mode, would then give you an opportunity to use the nonconformance as a real life example of a failure to the controls that were defined in the FMEA. So it would give you an opportunity, because it's all linked together in one system, it would give you an opportunity to go back and reevaluate the controls and maybe modify them or modify the FMEA.
Yeah, sets you up for more of that closed loop process at work. Yeah.
That was a great question. That was an opportunity to pull a couple more things together in the
Yeah.
bigger picture. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe we'll scoot along and kind of wrap up the slides and then come back to some of these additional questions.
Okay. I think I just stopped sharing. Did I not?
You did, and just switching to me. All right.
Nice.
Okay, well, thank you again, Tom, for that very informative demonstration, and I'm glad we had some of those questions come in, help to expand on some of those ideas. And certainly nonconformance handling is a very powerful gateway to that continuous improvement and that additional quality events layer to kind of widen that funnel is very powerful as well.
We're all very excited about that new application. It's definitely.
Oh, did you want to tell us how excited, how excited you are?
No, thank you.
Very. All right, so we'll move along. Next up, I just wanted to provide you guys with a real world example of an ETQ customer whose quality journey has really transformed their business. And there we go. So Trane Technologies is a global manufacturer of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning and refrigeration systems for commercial and residential applications. Their quality journey with ETQ began 10 years ago, and each step of their phased approach has been focused on ROI. The Trane quality team motto is think big, start small, scale fast, and they really do live by that motto. Instead of beginning with dot control, they thought big by focusing on solving their most prevalent quality problems, which were waste, scrap, non-conforming material type things. And kind of back to that 110-100 rule framework, their customer complaint volume, or what would represent the 100, became such a red flag that they just could not ignore it any longer. But they started small to start tackling those issues. They deployed what they call their core 4 applications to help bring that order to their internal functions and supply base. They launched non-conforming materials, a process and product deviation application, and then internal and using corrective action both internally and for their suppliers. And this approach allowed the quality team to kind of tactically address the issues while at the same time proving the platform's ROI and that favorable business impact, giving them just more runway to continue building and deploying additional modules. And a really big win came for the quality team when they gained leadership buy-in to essentially fund ETQ across the entire enterprise rather than requiring kind of dozens of individual plants. I think they had over 50 sites around the world to invest separately. And this really accelerated their adoption because it removed that cost as a barrier kind of at the plant level. So when you get that kind of buy-in through that effort of kind of building out the ROI story and kind of following through, having the discipline to follow through on that really pays dividends. Train really thinks of ETQ Reliance as a data superhighway. They use it to facilitate data transfer throughout all areas of their business using the techniques that Tom kind of demonstrated earlier. They've also gone deep into breaking down external silos with suppliers. And one of the powerful ERP integrations they have basically allows them to automatically debit the system, debit the supplier account for non-conforming material, and then resolve that credit through the supplier corrective action process. So it really puts the pressure on that, reducing that cycle time and working that through more quickly with suppliers. And so the results of their quality journey so far are, as you can see, quite impressive, in excess of $2 million just in their warranty costs. So we'll provide, we have some recordings, a webinar of their Train's quality leader talking in much more detail about their journey. So we can provide that link to his story and the follow-up email from this session. So no matter where you are in your journey, we can help from calculating the ROI to mapping out your deployment strategy to providing the level of onboarding support that you need. Our comprehensive, as you've seen, the comprehensive application portfolio and that unmatched flexibility to build it how you need it and want it means you can start out of the box and then to address those most critical issues and then expand, configure, and connect more processes over time. And we bring over 30 years of experience serving over 600 customers and 1 million users across, as you can see, a broad range of industries. And we put all of these best practices we've gathered over the years and through all these customers into the Reliance platform. So you can jumpstart your quality journey and we can all advance our practice of quality management. So I mentioned that we can help you build that business case for your quality technology investment. So I wanted to tell you a little more about that. We engaged an independent third party to build a custom ROI modeling tool. And that ROI model was built by independently validating what we called sources of QMS value across over a dozen ETQ customers. So shown here are some of the customer benchmarks that resulted from that analysis. And the dimensions span reducing costs, streamlining ops, reducing non-compliance. So we can apply the modeling to your organization and provide a personalized ROI analysis that can help you clearly quantify the impact for your stakeholders. So the easiest way to inquire about this is to reach out at the link on the screen or just at etq.com. There's a chat bot there as well. And you can reach out to the team to learn more. And before we get to more Q&A, I also want to mention that you can view the rest of this webinar series at the link on the screen. We've covered topics ranging from supply chain, training management, closed loop quality. So be sure to visit to catch up with the rest. And now here we are. We've arrived at the official Q&A. So let me check. let's see, let me check the question box, see what we've got. So we have a question around external system integration, so interaction with MES systems. Tom, could you talk about what you've seen what you've seen in the realm of integrations with MES systems and potentially tagging? I think the question is tagging through that integration impacted material. How would that work, or how have you seen MES integrations look? Oh, you're muted. Glad I'm not the only one doing that today.
That was a rookie move. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
Anyway, and it was such a great intro too. I was ready to go and everything else. As I was saying to nobody but myself just a second ago, we've done many integrations like this. Our system, our platform is purposely designed to be open for integration with any type of system to automate the relationships and the passing of information back and forth. So the typical type of integration we've seen with MES, and I described this a little bit when I did that overview, the closed loop process overview. MES, which is going through the process of manufacturing, might identify a nonconformance or an out of spec situation. Something is done and it doesn't meet your expectations, essentially, it doesn't meet the spec. A real-time integration could do a couple of things. It could trigger a nonconformance report in ETQ Reliance. It could also trigger a hold in your ERP system or your MES, whichever one you're using, to change the location in the warehouse if it needs to be. So the goal is, we talked about cost of quality. If you can automate this process, just that first step, the ability to put it on hold and immediately stop the process, as well as alert people in the quality world that they have to do something with the nonconformance, is going to save you money on scrap because you don't continuously to generate nonconformance in the process. It's put on hold immediately. What we also see often, and I showed an example of the disposition decision in the nonconformance record in ETQ Reliance. Once that disposition decision is made, we can also have another integration back into either the MES or ERP to update the status with the disposition decision. So do we want to scrap it, work it, rework it, use it as is, whatever the situation might be? The goal is to get that communication done very quickly. So what it allows is it's combining automation with human intervention. So the human intervention is the part where somebody is assigned a nonconformance report automatically. The product's already on hold. They just have to simply evaluate the situation and make a decision as to what to do with the disposition. Once that decision is made, another automation would then automatically trigger the release of the product or the movement in the warehouse to a different location, or whatever might have to happen. There could be a financial thing that has to happen on the other side as well. So that's the sort of an example of what we've seen. It doesn't really matter what the MES system is. It could be any, and we've had all kinds of integrations. Our strategy is to keep the integration capability as open and as flexible as possible, because even two different implementations using the same ERP could be different based on how you've implemented that ERP or the MES system. So our goal is to allow you that flexibility.
Yeah, great. Yep, and those automations are just so powerful for saving time, and like you mentioned earlier, just being able to act more quickly and make decisions more quickly. Great. What can you tell us about Reliance search capability? The question, and this may be a follow-up post-webinar, but the question is, how intelligent is your search capability? Ours is strictly pattern match.
So we have some tools built into the system that allow for different types of searching. So the view searching is the most obvious one, where we have a list of columns with categories and we can easily search by any of those. And you saw me execute a few of those as well. We also do have full text search capability in our system with intelligent variables and this and that. We have a whole manual on how to use our searching. So you can use wildcard searches and searching in any field, including text-based attachments. You can limit that to certain applications or the whole platform. So it's almost like a Google search capability within the system.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Next question is around reports. Not sure if you're queued up to show or maybe just talk through some of the built-in reports or how that works.
Sure, we have a built-in tool called ETQ Insights, which is part of our core platform. It's an analytics and reporting platform. It allows you to do real-time reports, essentially. It also allows you to use your own third-party reporting tool and point to what's called the quality data lake, which is a much simplified human-readable format set of data that comes out of ETQ Reliance automatically. So there are several different options. If you understand the dashboarding capabilities that are available in something like Power BI or Tableau, that's basically what it is. We do provide some examples to start with, but typically during an implementation, we would assist you in modifying those. And moving forward in the very near future, you'll have the same level of flexibility with the dashboards and the analytics tools, Insights, as you do with our Reliance platform, to be able to set them up and modify them yourself.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely more coming down the line with insights and data, and it's data is the future. Data is now. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, back on the search topic. Will a search be able to see text within attached documents?
If it's a text-based attachment, yes.
Okay.
If it's an image, no. And if it's a picture or a scanned PDF, that's not searchable with text. But if it's a text-based attachment, including certain types of PDFs, absolutely.
Great. Okay, I think we just have maybe a couple more here. I think you may have touched on this earlier. There was a question about an 8D, having the 8D process kind of as an option in the platform. Is that?
Yeah.
If you want to just talk through that or show in the platform.
Yeah, maybe I'll show really quickly.
We've got a few minutes.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to grab a hold of this and make myself presenter. We have time. And I will show my screen, and I will show screen number 1. All right. Right now you can't see anything. That's okay. It's all okay. Now we can see. So
yes,
what I demonstrated before was more of a generic corrective action, which is almost like an 8D. But when you create a new corrective action in the system, we actually provide several different workflows or types. So if I click on this, there's an 8D type. So this is the one that I created before, which was automated to launch that type from any of the sources. But you could easily make it so that when you launch a corrective action, it launches this workflow, which is, it actually uses the same form that we saw before, but now it has different steps that are more applicable to the 8D process. So absolutely, 8D is a tried and true mechanism or capability, and we have been, we've implemented that for quite a long time. We've had that within our system.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you for showing that.
Sure.
I think that's, there's one more. Paper system versus electronic. What sorts of things to look for in a software solution? Well, I think you just saw a slew of reasons to be off paper and on electronic. Obviously, one of the most powerful things is connecting those workflows in real time and having those automations in place to keep things moving.
Yeah, there's no accountability when it's on paper. It's not
Yeah.
transparent. You don't know that you don't know who it's assigned to or when it's due. It's just there, and maybe there's a spreadsheet up on your SharePoint drive or something that has a corrective action listed, but it's not automating it through a workflow. The beauty of workflow is that it's very simple in concept, right? You have a process, it has steps in it, it assigns it using an email assignment. It shows up on your homepage as an assignment when you have something to do. So it'll always be there until you do it. Plus the due date is tracked using escalation to remind you that it's coming on you. And if you don't do it in a timely manner, it can escalate to your manager and even to a third level. So there's a lot of transparency in the concept of workflow to drive work and make sure that things get done. And then everything else we discussed earlier with the connectivity between processes, those were different workflows that were automating different processes. We have the integration with external systems to automate the processes, like we just talked about in one of the earlier questions about the MES integration. So you cannot get that from being on paper. Paper, you know, if you have a system that's manual, you'll probably always feel like you're fighting fires every day. You're always fighting the system and trying to just get through the day and get through the process. When you talk about automation through something like our ETQ Reliance platform and the analytics using ETQ Insights, instead of spending your day fighting fires, you're spending your day with continuous improvement activities to make things better, which, by the way, is almost the central tenet of Quality 4.0, right? So that's letting the system do all the work, predefining all your business rules in the platform so the workflow is carrying out those decisions that you would have made anyway. So if you know that in a certain situation you want it to go a certain way or have a certain person do something, why should you have to make the same decision over and over again and let the system do it for you?
Well said, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a couple more questions. Does ETQ have a test deployment environment you can run in parallel? The short answer is yes.
Yes.
Yep, that's a part of the packaging. You get a non-production environment as well as a production environment. And then,
Angela, are you guys still seeing my screen here or no?
No.
Okay.
Did you have something to share?
No, you know, our friends behind the curtain want me to put up the final slide.
Oh, whoops.
That's all right. I can do it.
Sorry.
I'll do it. That's all right. I'll do it really quick.
You got it? Okay.
That's all right. Yeah. Just give
All
me a
right. So
second.
yeah, sure. And then I think we've got time for this one last question, and we can wrap.
Can you see that or no?
Yep, perfect. Thank you for that.
Sure.
All right, so this might be more of a just a broad question. Does ETQ support ISO 9001, ISO 14001, IATF 16949, Six Sigma?
Yes. So the reason why we support those things is that our system is a compliance management platform that automates your compliance management system. So if you're ISO 13485 or ISO 9001 or whatever other standards at ISO 14000, you're going to have procedures and documentation that you're using to implement those processes. So we have our document control application that would manage your procedures through a review and approval and revision workflow. That ties into our training application, which you have to train regardless of what your platform is or what your standard is. You have to have your own auditing program in place, right? So it doesn't matter what the audit type is. It could be a ISO 14000 audit or an ISO 9000 audit or 13485. Our system will allow you to automate your process, whatever that process might be. And then there are various other apps. We have a total of 42 that are designed to automate other aspects. Risk assessment, of course, with ISO 31000 and the new ISO 9001 2015 standard, which is more of a risk-based approach, we allow you to do that with that application. So we're not just automating quality standards, we're automating any compliance management standard that you might have to comply with.
Excellent. Well, that is I think, fantastic place to draw this to a close. Thank you all for all of your time, attention, and great questions. And we'll see you back here a month from now, March 23rd, for our quality essentials discussion. So we hope to see you then. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.